Good evening, saints of God. I'm so happy that you tuned back in today so that we can talk further about our series. This is a great revelation. This is something that God is going to use to enlighten and edify and free his people up from some things. That's the intention of this teaching. So we're going to go back for a little bit. We're going to recap some things that we talked about last week. And we're going to go right into the next system that we're going to talk about. Remember, we're talking about how the systems of this world are not designed to favor us. They never will. They can't. They are not designed to. They are not designed to make us better or do anything for us. Even if they have good intentions, it's just impossible because of the way the system is set up. So we're going to talk about tonight the system known as monarchy. Last week we talked about the system that God established, and God established the system of judgment. Judgment, we found out when we looked it up in the original Hebrew, judgment was synonymous with righteousness. So what God was letting us know is that under his system was under his righteousness. We even talked about Matthew 6:33 and how how Jesus spoke and taught us that if we seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and we can insert the word there, and his judgments, he said that all these things, and if you would look up these things he was talking about was what we wear, what we eat, and how we live. He said he would add those things to us. And yet, if we would be honest with ourselves, there are so many of us who name the name of Christ, who are suffering and are struggling to have these things. And we believe with all our hearts that we are seeking first God's kingdom and his judgment or his righteousness. This series is going to go far in helping us understand how to do just that. But tonight we're going to talk about the system of monarchy. The system of monarchy is the system of rule. How did we get there? Let's talk about it. Last week we looked at how God established his righteousness to rule over his people. God created his people. He gave himself as the ruler over them. What he would do is he would allow his spirit to endow some, and they would be his mouthpiece. They were the ones that he would use as a way to communicate to his people. That's what Moses did. That's what Samuel did. All of those that he used, that knew him, that had his spirit on them, they were able to hear from God and convey to God's people what God was feeling, if God was happy with them, if God was angry with them, what God was going to do to punish them. They knew all of this because of those that God appointed, and we call them judges. What we're going to find out is that that system has not gone away, but we stopped succumbing to it. And God's people were under that system for years, even when God was not pleased and he allowed other nations to enslave them, like the Egyptians or the Babylonians or the Persians. God still had rule over them, and even though they were in a country or in a land where there was monarchy, it didn't really touch them. Yes, they were slaves. But even in their enslaved state, God still did what he wanted to do for them. Remember, we said under the system of judgment, God always provided. They always had direction, and they were always equal. We pointed out that no person of God, no Hebrew ever owned another Hebrew. They served each other, but they didn't own each other. That was a foreign concept to them. They understood slavery because they were slaves, not because they produced them. Listen to that. Yet tonight we're going to look at the fact that they came to Samuel, who was the priest at that time and the judge. He was the one that God used to speak to his people. And they came to him and they said, we want a king. I could hear Samuel begging God's people, don't do this. You don't know what you're asking for. Have you ever been in a situation with someone that you love deeply? You saw them making a bad decision. You knew that the decision in the end would hurt them, but they were bound and determined to go forth with that decision regardless and no matter what you said. That's how it was for Samuel. Samuel pleaded with God's people, don't do this. You're not rejecting me, you're rejecting God. He knew that they were under the judgment and the righteousness of God. But God said to Samuel, hearken to their voice. Give them a king. Give them a king. And God began to say what was going to happen under that rule. That system that they bowed to was called monarchy. They wanted a king. They wanted somebody to rule over them. Now, the thing with that, they were just like we are. We ask for a lot of things in ignorance. We ask for a lot of things because we're so smart. We are geniuses. And we ask for stuff thinking we know everything. And then we get in there and realize this is not what we wanted. But there they were, God's people, saying to God, we don't want to be under your righteousness anymore. We don't want to be under your judgments anymore. Give us a king. So they got a king. Let's look at what has happened. And if we look down through the ages, we are still under that system. Let's compare the system of righteousness and the system of monarchy. Let's see what we're working with now that we are under monarchy. I said last week, and I've said several times, the systems of this world are not designed to favor us. We're in the United States of America. And if this word goes further, I'm saying no matter what the country is where you're born, where you reside, these same systems are in place and they function the same way. And the reason why they do that is because they're ruled and they're driven by a principality, and a principality of the devil. The devil is the prince of the air. He has a right to rule some things in earth. God gave him that right until the day of judgment comes. The day of God's total righteousness comes, where those who live for God and those who walk with God get to come in and be with God. But until that day, the devil has a right to do some of those things. But let me tell you, it was very interesting when I realized why I suffered through so much. There are things as God's child I'm supposed to be enjoying. There are things we call ourselves king's kid. As a king's kid, there are certain things I'm supposed to have a right to. And if we are all honest with ourselves, we're not enjoying all the privileges God has laid up for us. Let me tell you why. Let's look at the system of monarchy. What God spoke to me was, you all asked for that system. Now, I could argue with God and say, God, I didn't ask for that system. But what God pointed out was, yeah, but your forefathers did. And this generation and the generations prior have not done anything to correct it. And God's right. Let's compare. Let's compare. Last week, when we looked at the system of judgment, one of the first things we pointed out was that it was a system where everybody was equal. There was no one who ruled over another. God was the rule. God had a judge, but they weren't ruling over the people. Their function was to convey messages to the people from God. God was the ruler. Under the system of monarchy, there is somebody ruling over you. Whether you call them a king, whether you call them a president, they are there to rule over you. And monarchy is driven mostly by hierarchy. Under monarchy, there is a lesser and a greater. There is poor, there is rich. Hierarchy must have the lesser. It must have lesser so that the greater can feel great. There must be poverty in monarchy. There has to be. Someone has to be without. Someone has to be in lack so that those who have can understand what they have and feel like they're superior. I know that's not, that people don't feel, I'm not that way, but yeah, we strive to have, not because we want to help each other. We strive, some of us strive so hard to have because there's a mindset all over the world that the more you have, the better off you are. That's monarchy thinking. That's not judgment. That's not God. God makes his people equal. Yeah. Under monarchy, you are not equal. You are not equal. The monarchy is driven by legalism. Monarchy is driven by policy. And there is not ever going to be a law or a policy that's going to make everybody equal. I laugh when I think about how in this country and really all over the world, we love symbols. One of our great symbols in this country is our flag. You want to incite a riot? Refuse to stand and pledge allegiance to that flag. I was thinking about the words and how when I was a child, we were taught to pledge allegiance to that flag. Do you understand what I just said? We were taught to pledge allegiance. We were taught to give our flag, certain respect. Come on, somebody. And the words that we were taught to say was that we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And it says, and to the republic from which is that one nation under God. Now, first of all, we are not under God. Under God would mean we would be following the judgments of God. And we don't. I know that's hard to hear, but we don't. So we can't say we're under God. That's a lie. It says one nation under God. And then it says indivisible, meaning we are not divided. That is also not true. Especially at this point in time, we have never experienced division like we have now. And then they said with liberty, that's freedom. And everybody is not free. And justice. And everybody doesn't get justice. Everybody's not treated fairly. And it says with liberty and justice for all. That's a lie. And yet I'm expected to stand at any given time, anywhere that they are having some kind of public assembly and they want to pledge allegiance, they're expecting me to stand up and take my own hand, put it on my own heart and pledge that lie. I will no longer do it. I'm not saying you don't have to do it. I'm not saying you have to make the same choice. I'm just telling you that's my choice. Until we become one nation under God, until we become indivisible, until we do give liberty and justice for all, I will no longer do it. I feel like a revolutionary right now. I feel like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego probably felt when they said, when you hear the sound of a music, you bow. I'm not bowing anymore to a flag in a country that is treating me like I don't have any rights. They don't see me as equal. I'm not equal because of my gender. I'm not equal because of my race. I'm not equal because of my socioeconomic background. That is not God. God has a system that made me equal, regardless of my gender, regardless of my race, regardless of my socioeconomic background. Under God's system, I'm equal. Under monarchy, I'm not. Oh. The next thing we saw. Under monarchy, under judgment, God provided. Think about it. Even when he punished his people and allowed them to be enslaved, he still provided for them. That was that slavery thing. Yeah, they had to be slaves, but God kept providing. Even in their slave state, God kept blessing and they kept prospering. He prospered them to the point they intimidated the people that they were supposed to be enslaved by. That doesn't happen under monarchy. Monarchy does not provide for anybody. It only provides for itself. And it provides for itself through the systems that it establishes. Let's look at some. We have a system. This is not just in this country. This is all over the world. But let's look at the system of education. From the time we were young, we are taught certain things in school, only to find out later those things were not altogether true. We are taught lies and we are taught things, and we allow our children to be taught these things because of the fact we are supposed to be indoctrinated to believe certain things. To be taught certain behavior means we can be controlled. Come on up in here, I feel something going on. I know as I sit here, this is hard for some people to hear. Our American history is fraught with lies. We were taught things that never happened. And yet, for generation after generation after generation after generation, we're taught these same things. We were taught that the pilgrims came. Our Thanksgiving is based on a story that's altogether a lie. You may not believe it, and you don't have to take my word for it. Do some history. There were certain Indians that were educated people. They used to go back and forth to England. That's why when those settlers came, they helped them out. They wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for the Indians helping them. But they were not savages. They were not uneducated people. Oh, y'all don't want to hear this, do you? Because you're so sure that it's all about Miles Standish and Pocahontas. The devil is a lie. Those are things we were taught. Education is just one system. Look at our system of government. All over the world, not just us. The system of government is not designed to be just. Not to everybody. The system of government, our laws are saying one thing, our behavior is saying another, and there is nothing that stops monarchy from conforming their system to suit itself. That's why you see some people commit crimes and go home. Others commit crimes and go to jail. That's how it works under monarchy. God didn't do that. You sinned, you got punished. No matter who you were. You could have been the king. Ask David. Didn't work like that. But monarchy, it works like that. We also saw that under God's judgment, he gave direction. For example, the word says that he took his own finger and wrote the commandments. He gave them to Moses. Moses delivered them to the people. And that's how the people knew how to function when they were free. Monarchy is driven by legalism. policy. Oh, come on, somebody. We know what I'm saying is the truth. Am I speaking anti-government, anti-American? Not necessarily so. But I'm speaking against anything that goes against the rights of me as a saint of God. Think about what I've just said. I'm going to end it right here. That's enough for you to ponder. But next week, we're going to look at how do I get from under, or how do I function within these systems and still be blessed of the Lord. How do I function out from under these systems? How do I get back to God's judgment? There is a way, and we're going to talk about it next week. God bless you. I'll see you next week.